Good afternoon, everyone. Special afternoon edition. Today, we have a special guest from over the pond, Terra Free. We have Ed from Shades of Vengeance. You may recognize him from such games as Era Kaiju, Era Balam, Era Pick an Adjective. But today, slightly different topic. We're talking comics.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me back, and thank you everyone for tuning in to watch. We are going to talk about not this comic, in fact, the second comic in this series, Cascade Part 2. It was always envisioned as a three-parter. I've got Part 1 right here. Part 2 not quite printed yet, obviously, because the Kickstarter is still being underway. Very exciting. We are. What's that? I'm not going to guess. I'm going to ask Kickstarter what percentage we are funded, because that would be 77% funded is what we are. So we've got 11 days left, plenty of time left to reach that all important funded goal. And I'm excited because this issue, this Cascade number 2. The Cascade saga itself has been in the making for a long time, but Cascade number 2 itself has been about 3 years in the making. I planned it sort of during the pandemic, and it never quite got to complete until now. It's one of those rare occasions where even I sort of hesitated a bit and sort of held it back and like, no, I need to do more work on this. I'm not done. I need to keep working on it.
Understandable.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where some projects it's the right thing to do, to hold it a bit longer, but it will eventually reach the point where you need to push it forward further and make it happen so that you can move on with the story, if nothing else. Obviously, a 22-page comic is a wonderful thing, but if you've got 66 pages of story to tell, then probably you need to move on a bit, right?
Yes. So speaking of that, we mentioned that usually when we see you here, and I would say you're probably best known as a game designer. Now, to me, writing for games and writing for comics, like you have to use two different parts of your brain, because usually when you're writing for games, you have to leave things sort of vague, and in some ways you have to leave them generic so that the individual table can fill in the details. How hard is it for you to switch back and forth?
So, like you say, it's a different muscle. I mean, I have written a few comics now. In fact, I should move my chair slightly. These are the comics that I've written, that lot there. So I've written a few comics. So it's a muscle that I exercise quite frequently. That's far from saying I'm perfect. One of the things that I'm still working on improving, and Cascade 1 and 2 have been a big step forward for me. It's actually pacing. Getting the pacing right for a story that is part action and part character drama, I would guess. I guess you'd call it. It's very tricky to get the right balance there of feeling right, and that's one of the things I struggle most with. I generally, I should also say at this point, I have a lot of help. I've got Jonathan Lewis who co-writes the comic with me. I've got Amy Allwarden and Jennifer Martin who co-wrote Lacuna and Lacuna and Violet's comics with me. I'm very sorry. And they come back to help me with dialogue editing for those characters to help make sure they speak the way that we wrote together. A second pair of eyes, as it were, on those individual characters. So a lot of the things that are generally a lot harder. I'm working with an artist who's been working with me for a long time, so he knows what Penumbra and Blue Shift and Violet look like. He can draw those with no problem, and I'm not looking for small inconsistencies because he helped design the characters in the first place. So for me, it comes down to the bare bones of here is the story, and I need to convince you that this is a story that you can follow. More than a story you'll be interested in, a story you can follow and experience a variety of pacing changes in.
Nice.
So
And
yes, very different. Fun muscle to exercise. Yeah, you just do game design the whole time. You get a bit. I should say I would get a bit stuck in a rut if I never did anything
mhm,
else.
okay,
Because,
that makes
like you
sense.
say, it's just one kind of creativity. I see myself as a person who creates universes and then expresses them in various ways, which is why I've done so many different sorts of things. Because I like trying new media. I like telling the right story in the right way. So, yeah.
So you mentioned you had a lot of help. How now that you have gotten a number of books under your belt, how much are you able to like sort of hand over parts of the story? And what I mean is like usually like if you're talking about gaming modules or rule books or whatnot, it's the word is there, and then you get pictures just to give like emphasis
Mm,
or maybe some clarity to the words. Whereas in comics, comics are primarily a visual medium.
absolutely.
A well done comic wouldn't actually need words. You'd be able to understand the story that's going on. So in in you're definitely driving the ship, 100% when you're doing the games, and now you sort of have to rely on that visual team. Is it easy to sort of like give up the power? Is it more like, oh no no, just no, okay.
Um, you've definitely cottoned on to something that is very different. And I remember once, a long time ago, someone asked me, I forget who the other one was. He said, "Are you Kubrick or are you?" And I forget who the other one was. I don't want to
Hmm.
drag anyone, but obviously someone who is the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Someone who's a bit more fast and loose, and you just let it happen and whatever. And I am Kubrick, right? I am looking at the background. I'm looking at the details. I'm looking at. Once upon a time, I let an anachronism slip through, and anyone who wants to go check out my comics and find the anachronism, it's in there somewhere. I made a bit of a mistake, and I learned from that. Right? It's the kind of thing that everyone does. Occasionally, you make a mistake, and then you learn from that. Um, the the challenge comes in how hard I want to hold on to the details, right? There are some places where the details really matter, and there are some places where they really don't. And working with an artist is about finding that balance. There's a lot of trust that goes on. And I'm actually working on a project now, a different project. I'm working on Cascade 2's lettering at the moment. I'm just finishing off some dialogue. But I'm also working on the artwork for another comic, a
Yeah.
different comic line. It's called Demon Sword. And in that, I made a deliberate decision when I started that work that I was going to let the artist draw what he thought based off what I said. And only if it was like an egregious error that would cause real problems was I even going to speak up about something. So that's my exercise in really letting go even more. It's if it's about right, I go, yep, that's fine. You show what you're trying to show. And that was the agreement I had with the artist at the beginning. We both went into it with our eyes open that I will raise something if it's a really big problem. With Cascade, I'm a bit more focused on the details. I worked with Ramad for a long time. And I decided that the right thing to do was give an open ability to draw the scenes with, oh, I think you misunderstood me here. What I meant was this.
Hmm.
Oh, like I didn't explain it very well. Let me draw stickman. Let me, whatever it is that I need to do to get the point across. There was a whole big thing in Cascade number 3 with the word tendril.
Hmm.
So Penumbra, one of the characters, I've got her right here on the cover. She can create similar to Green Lantern, like create constructs, but out of shadows. So think sort of Green Lantern type thing.
Hmm.
Now I said she's connected by a tendril of shadow to a whole bunch of other things, and they got very confused, and we ended up with Doc Ock looking arms, and then we ended up with like Red Omega looking arms. The
Yeah,
metal
yeah.
tentacles from the 90s, the way he was drawn in the 90s. And it's like that's yeah. Okay, you put this through a translator or something because you didn't know what the word was, and that's totally fine. But that's not what I mean. What I mean is it's just like a little slip of shadow connecting her to this thing. So sometimes it can be really challenging. Like it can be a really interesting challenge to show or explain to an artist what it is you're trying to do without because I'm not a very good artist. I'm not great at drawing. I'm quite good at certain aspects of being an art director. I'm quite good at lighting. I'm quite good at where the lighting is wrong or overcomplicated
Hmm.
or shadow is wrong or whatever. I'm quite good at that. But that's a skill I've built up over many years. I haven't really picked up a pencil and drawn seriously in over 20 years. So, you know, um,
Yeah, I had a guy on one time. He's American, and his series takes place in like a dystopian future Atlanta.
uh-huh.
And the only thing is, his artist was from the Philippines. And that's when the guy realized that downtown Manila must look very different from downtown Atlanta.
Oh, it really does. My wife is actually Filipina. As it happens, I've
Uh-huh.
never been to Manila, but I have been to several cities in the Philippines, and yes, it is strikingly different to an American city, indeed an
Yeah.
English city. It is strikingly different.
Yeah. So that's there's always an issue of
Context.
communication,
Yeah,
and
it's
even
the sort of it's very easy to fall into the trap of believing that everyone has the same context as you. I remember
yes.
I was working with a young writer, like a young as in relatively inexperienced, um, on a particular comic called Drift, and he wrote a university, and I said, okay, you're American, and I understand that you understand what a university looks like. I went to this university. I went to a beautiful medieval town called Durham here in England. It is exactly what you are probably imagining right now. It's very Georgian or earlier.
Hmm.
You're looking at some very ornate buildings, and here is the building where I had my lectures. And that's not what you mean, and I know that's not what you mean, and I actually had to have a little bit of a push on this guy because he was like, "No, but it's obvious what I mean as a university." I'm like, "Your artist,
Mm,
the artist who does this, might not be from where I'm from, where you
yeah.
from. You don't know. They might be from the Philippines, as an example." And you need to give some kind of context and not make the assumption that everyone's life experience is identical, or it's not going to end up the way that you're trying to envision it. So yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things where it's very easy to fall into the trap of I know my context and everyone must know this. It's so obvious. Because that's something that we all kind of deep down assume unless we
Yeah.
are thinking and we learn to think. We assume that everyone else looks at the world the same way that we do because that's like our base assumption because that's how we are. You've got to learn as a person as you grow as a person to think, no, you know what, it's actually a totally different point of view that other people have because of their own life experiences. And downtown Manila versus downtown Atlanta, yeah, you can't get a lot more different.
Not similar. And that kind of brings me to another question. So, um, I personally would consider comics, especially like 22-page floppies, like it's basically a North American cultural invention. Not to say the UK didn't have comics, but when I think of comics from the UK, I think more like Judge Dredd and things like that, and not as much capes and cowls. So when you're writing, do you sort of think like, oh, okay, I have to make this, I have to sort of change it a little more to play with like the standard uh, like Marvel and DC tropes and like do something with that? Or do you try to put more in just from your local home experience in the UK?
So that's a very interesting question, and the first part of my answer is going to be this. I'm going to reach down here and pick up this. This is the comic I grew up on,
Hmm.
which was English. A friend of mine bought this for me at a recent comic convention for this comic. But yes, Sonic the comic was what I grew up on, because I was a massive fan. What's not to like? Um, and that was the comic I grew up reading. Not Judge Dredd for obvious reasons, being a kid, you know.
Yes.
And obviously since I've read a lot more comics, but for me, I think that I do a lot of co-writing when it comes to comics. I do write my own comics as well. Like I've written solo a few times.
Mm.
I do a lot of co-writing, and it depends a lot on the co-writer I'm working with. So two of my co-writers are American, and one of them is Canadian, but has spent a lot of time in England. So
Okay.
Lacuna and Penumbra and Blue Shift. Lacuna is sort of. I don't use real places. I kind of do more of a. This might remind you of a place, and if it does, then good on you. But Lacuna basically comes from Chicago, where Amy
Okay.
spent a lot of her life. We sort of have like a slightly distorted version of Chicago, which is actually where Cascade takes place. In fact, takes place in Lacuna's home city. Blue Shift takes place some distance over, probably a bit further west in America. Because again, not technically Earth. And then Violet pretty much lives in London. So we wrote an English superhero, in effect, someone who approaches it from that perspective. But at the end of the day, the important thing that I think that I deliver with comics is a story that speaks to people. Violet is the daughter of immigrants who are told every year your visa's never going to get renewed again, and then it's like they have the stress all around that time, and they don't know when they're going to get kicked out of the country. She was born here, so she's okay. Her parents, she doesn't know how long they'll get to stay, and every year it's your visa won't be renewed again. This is the last time. So that's a real thing that she has to live with, and her parents have to live with on a day by day basis.
Hmm.
Penumbra is a bit more like a Marvel superhero. Penumbra is a a sort of a very larger than life character who we wanted a larger than life character, just someone who can waltz through life and everything goes the right way, so you don't need to worry about taking very much seriously. Lacuna, on the other hand, is an angry teenager, and who hasn't been an angry teenager at some point in their life and made the stupid decision because you're a teenager, so you must be right. That your parents are controlling you too much. You don't need your parents. You can just leave. It's sort of like it's one of those things that you can dig into. And one of the things I enjoy about these four characters in particular is each of them is an exaggerated version of one part of my personality. Blue Shift is my ADHD out of control. Just absolutely out of control. No filter between brain and mouth. Go, 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 go. Talking all the time. Flipping between subjects. Something distracts her. She's doing it. She is moving twice as fast as anyone else around her, and they can't keep up. That's. I feel like that some days, right? Violet is someone who believes in doing the right thing, no matter what the personal sacrifice is. Yeah, I feel like that some days. Lacuna is an angry kid who is just angry, just very, very angry about everything all of the time. Yeah, you know what? I feel like that sometimes too. And being able to lean into these sort of different parts of the personality, it's very cathartic. And it results in, on some occasions, a very compelling story. And it gives me the opportunity to write about things that a lot of people don't want to include in comics. Violet #2 was really a comic about perhaps a more realistic take on Spider-Man's life, in that Spider-Man is almost defeated by a supervillain, but he bounces back, and the next issue he's fine, he's fighting another supervillain, you know, it's sort of the cycle continues. With Violet, she is almost defeated by a supervillain in her first comic. In #2, she has some serious, like, she needs some therapy, right? And she's not gone and got it. And the opportunity to do something like what I did at the beginning of Violet 2 versus Violet 1, where she introduces herself with almost the same words, but it's totally different as a result of what happened last issue. Right? It's like, I'm okay, I guess, because I always read that if you think you're going crazy, you're probably fine. You know, it's sort of I've had a lot of people read that comic and find it quite moving, which, you know, is the best feedback I could be given in my opinion.
Definitely.
Cascade is a story about those enormous mistakes that you make. Everyone makes mistakes, huge mistakes sometimes. And Cascade is quite literally the mistake personified. Penumbra made a mistake. She did a silly thing that she shouldn't have done. And as a result of that, a friend got hurt. And then everything she tried to do to make it better makes it worse. And after a while, she realizes she needs some help, so she goes to get some help. But Cascade #1 was really about understanding the problem. Cascade #2 is about something that I run into every day of my life. So in my day job, I am a professional project manager. And part of my job is to make sure that teams work well together. You know, it's a huge part of what I have to do, making sure that each individual can work with the other individuals they need to work with to deliver an overall thing. And that's given me quite a lot of unique insight, or shall we say experience, maybe not so unique, experience around the story of Cascade #2, because Cascade #2 is the story of a dysfunctional team. There's no leader, right? Penumbra kind of feels like she should be the leader because she brought them together and sort of seems like she's on top of everything. But in reality, she's a terrible leader. She's no good at it whatsoever and has no interest in leading because she can do everything better than everyone else anyway. Like, if she has a task to do, she will do it better than anyone else in the team anyway, in her opinion. So what's even the point in asking for help?
Makes sense.
Violet is trying to just use brute force. Violet is in the software delivery world. Violet is the best developer you've ever run into. She can brute force any problem and get it sorted out for you. But in this case, brute forcing the problem only makes it worse. And you know, that's sort of an analogy for me. Again, I'm talking about software delivery, but it comes across in all kinds of different teamwork situations where you've got one person who is the strongest, the best at what they're doing, but because they're not aligned with everyone else, they're not actually helping when they deliver this perfect thing that's supposed to slot in somewhere, but the other people are not delivering. They're being a bit more, I don't know, maybe they're being a bit more impulsive, like Lacuna or Blue Shift. And as a result, I got to bring what a team can be like to life on a comic page in an entertaining and fun story, but something that I think that most people who have worked with other people, pretty much anyone who's ever had a job, is going to understand this comic and appreciate the story and its realism regarding trying to bring people together when you don't know how. Whether you're the one who's had to do it, whether you've watched a manager try to do it, whether you're the person who is, and some people are the person who is confident that you could do it better, but you don't have time to do absolutely everything, so you need help. It's an absolutely fascinating thing to be telling as a story, and I kind of backdoored into it by mistake, which makes it even more interesting. Like, it wasn't planned that I was going to do this story about about a dysfunctional team. When we first talked about Cascade, we talked about it in very broad terms. This page you've got up now, this is Penumbra's friend who touched this object and turned into a cyborg. And then if you actually scroll on another couple of pages, Penumbra tries to stop it, and it goes quite badly wrong, so she drops a building on her, only to find that Cascade turns energy into matter with a decent multiplier. So all she did by dropping a building on her is make her enormous. The more you hit it, the worse it gets. And obviously, most people's reaction to a giant robot is to hit it. So you're not going to win that way. In fact, Penumbra, sort of the earliest indication of Penumbra not really taking the rest of her teammates seriously is when Violet turns up and just punches it really hard. Because Violet she can fly and she's got super strength. So yeah, she can punch it really hard. But all it does is make it grow bigger. It's not helpful. And Penumbra, who has made this mistake at the beginning of the comic, berates Violet for doing something so stupid. It's like it's sort of, as I said, it's the seeds of that bad teamwork, that bad leadership. And the thing is, I'm going to give an exclusive for anyone watching here. I don't intend this story to end with them being a good team. That's not the intention. They don't magically sort out all the problems and suddenly become a good team. That's a thing that takes a long period of time of working together and everyone working towards trying to be a team. Penumbra, Lacuna, Blue Shift, Violet, they have no interest in being a team. They are solo heroes who are thrown together. This is I have a lot of, again, from my own experience, I have a lot of problems with the way a lot of people write teams coming together. You have The Avengers is a good example, the Avengers movie. Now, I love that movie. I really do. I adore that movie. It's a great movie. But everyone suddenly backs down and listens to Captain America. And I understand that's Captain America's real superpower. But, like, it doesn't... It was a cheat, almost. Like, just everyone's going to listen to Captain America because it's Captain America. By the time Age of Ultron came along, I was like, right, but these guys have been working together for a long time now, and they've learned to work together. That's fine. I don't mind that. They now know what working together means. And once you have a team that's quite cohesive, adding 2 new members to it, in this case, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, is a doable thing, right? That's a thing that you can do relatively easily because they'll take a lead from everyone else and what everyone else is doing. So you've got lots of people to look at and go, well, I'm a bit like this person, a bit like that person, a bit like that person. So this is what it looks like. Got it. Okay, fine. And you can do that. That can work. But yeah, that first Avengers movie, if Cap didn't have that superpower, the Avengers would not have worked together very well. they probably would not have repelled that invasion because it relied on them working together. So I don't want to tell a story of where people magically come together as a team. I want to tell a story where the supposed team leader keeps vanishing. No one knows where she is. She's not leading them. And then she'll. There's a brief scene in maybe. Let me have a quick look. Let me see if I can find the color page. She basically, they set up a plan and then she just improvises completely to the surprise of everyone else involved. I think I've got a colored image. No, I've got a penciled image. I'm very sorry, but that's okay. I think I've got it here.
All right.
Let me find that. There it is. Yeah. I think I can share screen. Yes, I've got it here. Let's have a look. See if that works. I've got where is it? That one there.
There we go. Okay.
There we go. So these two panels here, Lacuna there is can I mouse over it? Does it show? Yeah. Lacuna there is opening a portal. That's his thing. He can make portals. So that he can look inside Cascade. They've opened up the outer plate of the robot. Violet's using her super strength there. Lacuna's looking through. Next thing you know, Penumbra just dives through the portal and is like, "Oh, beggars can't be choosers. In I go." And she's just trying to slide inside. And she's then going to go and solve the issue herself, she reckons. And that is an example of the bad leadership that I'm talking about, where it doesn't work. You know, it's not that easy. And I think that is a much more fascinating story to tell when you're bringing individuals who have already had at least one comic each together.
Mm-hmm.
When you bring those together as a team when they don't know what they're doing, Penumbra quite literally knocked Lacuna out of his own portal, so he nearly fell to his death. You know, it's like he had to grab onto Violet and get flown back to the ground because he can't fly. And that is terrible leadership, but it's interesting, right? It's not a story that you see very often.
Yeah.
When you look at superheroes coming together, you do see it with supervillains. Definitely, you see a lot of infighting, but this isn't even infighting. It's just, I'm smarter than you. I'm better than you. I'm the one who's going to solve this, and I'll solve it alone. And you're just the person who got me to the place where I could solve it. That's all you did, and then I did all the work. And that's Penumbra's attitude, which is really fun to write. It's again, I don't think it's something you see very, very often, where someone goes into the interpersonal dynamics of being a team. And now she's inside the robot, no contact with the others, so they're just left standing outside the robot trying to stop the robot. And maybe her plan works, or maybe it doesn't, but can they sit there and just rely on her plan working? Is that what they're going to do? What do you do next in that situation? And it's a lot of fun to think about that kind of, the way in which people approach that kind of situation. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think it works well with the younger people. I mean, speaking of the Avengers again, one of the things about that is, like, once you have a bunch of guys who are at least in their 30s, they're usually kind of, they know how to tamp down the ego to work. Yeah, but you get a bunch of like teenagers or early 20s. You see a lot of this in real life.
A lot of fireworks. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean, I think that makes it a compelling and interesting story to read, because you don't see that. And that's the story I decided I wanted to tell. And to be honest, it was with little reference to what anyone else might tell as a story. That's not what it's about for me. Comics are about telling stories in my universe, expanding my universes that you may have come across from role-playing games, or you may have come across from, I don't know, audio dramas, or any of the other stuff we do. Maybe the movie that we made, Occupied. But they're about expanding that universe. You were talking earlier about role playing games, about how you have to leave it open. I view a role playing game as like scaffolding, right?
Hmm.
That there are fixed points where you know that's a thing; it's going to be there. But a
Yeah.
role playing game lets you build your own house based on that scaffolding, and it can be any shape you want. A comic
Right.
builds a wall for you, right? It builds a wall for you, or part of a wall for you, and says that thing is here. That's here. That's a thing. And interestingly, I'm actually running an Era the Empowered, the superhero role playing game. That this is in the same universe as this. I'm actually running a campaign right now with a few 4 players, and it's based directly after this. And all I've done is tell them, right, well, what you saw on TV was giant robot messing up the city, and then afterwards people said the superheroes saved the city, kind of, maybe, except there was a lot of damage, so it's probably their fault. And that's all I told them, because I don't want to give away the plot of Cascade number 3. It's
Hmm.
not complete yet. And they're loving it. They're loving the feel of this world based on the knowledge that the only thing people really know about superheroes is giant robot. Right? They're absolutely
Yes.
adoring exploring this world where that's everything anyone knows about superheroes. And one of them is playing Violet, this super strong character. One of them is playing that character. So everyone she comes across has seen her on TV. She is famous. And it's like, oh, okay. What do I do with that? It's so
I can.
it can add flavor and depth to a role playing game world by
Yeah, yeah.
having more material, I guess, is the point I'm making.
So will we ever see? You know what? I'm sorry, I do not remember the name of the era superhero game,
Era the
but
Empowered.
the Empowered. That's it. Will we see this as like a either a campaign guide or like modules?
It's not impossible. Um, at the moment, I have chosen for the most part to not retell comic stuff as modules.
Hmm.
However, I am approaching the point where there's a module I've already written, where if I keep progressing the story, that should be a comic, logically.
Hmm. That makes sense.
Penumbra and Lacuna get trapped with a bunch of other heroes in a specific location, which I'm not going to spoil it. And basically, it's the next adventure they would have after this. So if I was going to write another Lacuna comic after this, it is very, very likely that it would be that which I've already written as a module in the role playing game. So it'd be the other way around, almost. Based on the fiction in the role playing game and the module from the role playing game that actually brought that specific adventure to life. So the other way. That said, I wouldn't rule it out. Cascade is an interesting villain to deal with. The problem is that the Cascade story would encourage a group to not work together, and I would feel a bit bad putting a GM through that by deliberately making a campaign where people working together was a hard thing to. Players are already enough of a menace to each other as it is anyway. He says with my latest fantasy session, having ended with one player killing all of the other players except the paladin, who then brought everyone back to life. It was
Nice.
like, I'm going to do a whirlwind attack. Are you sure? Yes, I'm going to hit everything in the area. Are you really, really sure about this? Ay, ay, ay.
So you had sent me the link and to Cascade 1, and when I opened it, there was video from I believe you said it was your movie.
Yeah.
Are you ever thinking of making episodes of this stuff, of the comics?
So movies are unfortunately very, 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 very,
Mm.
very expensive. This took all of my resources. I'm not going to throw any numbers out, but this movie occupied. It is 18 minutes long, and it took all of my resources to actually make it happen. And it was an amazing experience. It was amazing, brilliant, fun thing to do. Daisy and Mark were fantastic. They're the primary two characters. One of them is Drift, who I've mentioned earlier, and the other one is called Snake. And they were both fantastic. It was so much fun to work with them, work with the production team, and the post production team. I learned so much about making a movie you wouldn't believe. And it took all of the resources I had and slowed down production of everything else for a year and a half while I built up again afterwards. I don't regret it at all, but it's a huge investment of time and of money to make a movie or indeed episodes. I explored some animation at one point. I even did a 5-minute sort of proof of concept, but unfortunately the animator didn't quite finish it. Like, it's about 2/3 done and 2/3 sketches. Sorry, 1/3 sketches. I'm very sorry. It never got entirely finished, which is a real shame. But again, it was incredibly expensive. So I am anti AI. I am very anti AI.
Yeah.
In creativity, you know, I don't feel like I should be denying someone a job by using AI because I can't afford it. I need to work out the business side of doing something like that better. Would I do it? Yeah, absolutely. I wrote a script. I wrote a 1-hour script for the animation,
Oh
5 minutes
wow.
of which got put together. I wrote the movie. I've actually written another movie for my sci-fi universe, Era the Consortium. That's a full feature-length movie, about an hour and a half, 2 hours, give or take. I would love to make that. Getting the resources together is going to be the challenge. I've far from given
Yeah.
up. I've far from given up.
There's a guy who makes a series called Heroinberg.
Mm-hmm.
He lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So it's not like, he's in New York or LA. And so he has a comic, Heroinberg, and then he makes like a weekly show from it. And it's amazing. It looks absolutely cheesy. They'll have things like I can't remember the character's name, but she's like the world's preeminent gemologist. Oh, that was the thing. The thing is, there's some comet that explodes, and people who come in contact with the fragments got
Right.
superpower, but only women. So she's the world's preeminent gemologist. So of course, she's working in like a crystal store, like somewhere in downtown Pittsburgh. It's like, yes. I, I don't know if that's the level of cheese you want, but over here, at least in the 80s and the 90s, we had something called cable access
Yes,
TV, which is
I've
when
heard of it. Yeah.
it was amazing, and it was just people who had a dream, a dream and absolutely no resources. So I'm sure if you wanted, where there's a will, there's a way kind of
Yeah,
thing.
it's always, you know, how much time do you put into this thing that
Yeah.
is going to financially fail? That's the thing that becomes really hard, right?
See, I don't know if it would financially fail. Just because we have so many alternative distribution models. I think one big thing that's missing on like YouTube and Rumble is kind of like a weekly, like 10-minute series, um, where something happens, almost like in the early days of film, they had serials that would go before the films, and they'd be like 5-10 minutes of Flash Gordon,
Right.
and this and that, and you almost saw that in the very early days of when you had video podcasting back in like what was it like 05, 07, you saw some places do that. And I don't know why it fell apart, but it seems to me somebody is going to take up that mantle and they're going to make a bunch of money. I don't know when, I don't know how, but it's going to happen.
I don't know. Getting anyone to sit down and watch a video for 10 minutes these days is a challenge.
Yeah, so well, okay. All right. Yeah, I've got my YouTube numbers to prove that. So
Okay, well,
you
I
might
stand
be right.
corrected. You're
No,
the
you're
expert.
correct. You're correct.
Um,
10 minutes is a long watch.
well, I mean,
I don't
I
know.
don't think so personally, but I'm very old fashioned, to be honest. I learned that more and more as I meet more and more people. I am very old fashioned.
So getting back to Cascade
Mm,
for a second. So you've got the Kickstarter up,
yep.
um, and like you said, it's currently 70 some percent fulfilled.
Hmm.
Um, so with uh, or okay, so uh, you have a digital
Yep.
download,
Yep.
and then you have the physical. If somebody were to back the physical, when do you think they would get it?
So
Rough
I'm just
estimate.
finishing off some lettering tweaks now. I don't reckon it could possibly take more than a month from now to have it printed in my
Mhm.
hands.
Nice.
So you know, I really don't think it'll be very long to wait at all. I think I've put August here because I really like to be really, really, really like pessimistic. And it's not even an unreasonable length of time, in my opinion. If I was to say August, I don't think I would be shouted down as unreasonable. Um, and I'm pretty confident that it will probably be May.
Oh, nice.
I see no reason why it should take longer.
And another question I had. So, I sort of joked about it at the very beginning. Uh, there is a lot of political whatnots going on with increased tariffs and whatever.
Mm.
Do you see that as a potential um, snag or something that could cause a potential delay when you're shipping, or
So
at least to here in the U.S. I don't know what the rest
yeah,
of the world's going to do.
I mean, most of the rest of the world, it's not too much of a problem at the moment. Into the US, yeah, it can be. Um, I have taken the decision to, you know, take the tariffs on the chin. I've not increased
Mhm.
my prices. We'll see how it goes. That's where I'm at.
Okay. Well,
Um,
hopefully it won't be too much of a thing.
well, thank you
But
very much, BGC. That's very generous of you to say so.
um, so let's see. The one thing I didn't see. Oh no. Okay, you have it. Sorry. I was just looking to see if there was also Cascade One,
Yeah,
just in case people wanted to get that as
yes.
well.
It's also an add-on. So if you choose another thing and you would like a physical Cascade one, like one of these, it's an
Mhm.
add-on that you can select from the project. Thank you very much, BGC. That's very generous of you. Thank you. Romad worked very hard, um, and Seeker on this new issue worked very hard as well.
Mm. So speaking of, how do you go about finding your artists? When you have enough publications, is it people come to you and they're
No,
sending you?
no. Well, maybe, but I don't have enough publications. Let's put it that way. No, I found Romad who did the first Cascade issue. I found him on DeviantArt,
Okay.
probably 10 years ago now. I'd have to double check the date on Lacuna. It's around then. It's around 9 or 10 years ago that I found Ramad and we started working together. Actually, funny story. I was let down by the original artist that I hired for the first Lacuna comic, my first superhero comic. I was let down by that artist. He did 5 pages and then vanished into the ether and never came back.
That's pretty common.
Until he came back and then did 4 more pages and vanished into the ether again, which, you know, I should have known better. Fool me twice, you know. Ramad came along and picked up the pieces on Lacuna. And then he did Blue Shift, he did Violet, he did Violet number 2, he did Blue Shift number 2, he did Vigilance and Cascade number 1. So I've worked with Ramad on quite a lot of comics. And yeah, I found him on DeviantArt. He was someone who wanted to do comics, who wanted some experience under his belt working with a publisher, and I wanted an artist, and there we go. That was a match made in heaven. Along with a little bit of money. Yes, please pay your artists, folks. If you're going to hire someone, hire them. Don't expect them to work for free.
Yeah, definitely. It's a real delicate balance, I find. You know, there are a lot of artists who are goofballs and will, for whatever reason, disappear, especially if you paid them in advance. But also, even if you don't pay them in advance, a lot of times they'll just disappear.
Yeah,
for reasons.
It does happen. It does happen. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to take a risk. And if you look at someone and you like their art, and the reason that I worked with Rhodey again, the gentleman who disappeared the first time, is I love his art. Right, there is nothing wrong with his art at all. He's just, and he came back and he said, you know what, I'm sorry I abandoned you all those years ago. I really want another chance. Can I have another chance? And I'm a sucker for another chance. That's just the way I am. He produced 5 pages. I think it was 5 pages of really, really nice quality artwork, and then nothing. And I didn't pay him in advance. You know, it wasn't a money problem. Yeah. You know, it was just he did some pages. Maybe he paid whatever bill he was worried about, and then he vanished. I probably wouldn't do it a third time. You know, ironically, I'm strongly considering that the comic he did the second time, I'm strongly considering if he comes back in 10 years, I'll say, yeah, you can do the next 5 pages of this one. See what happens. It's tempting.
Yeah, and just my advice, if you do find someone that's good, you know, just for anyone who's out there starting, make sure you treat them well. Try to pay as quickly as you can after they get work done, because you know, artists need to eat too, and they are definitely going to go back to the person who pays them right away instead of making them wait for a month or more.
Don't sit on payments making people wait. I couldn't believe it when I heard some stories from some of the artists I work with. But even beyond that, the other thing, if you really want to keep an artist engaged, yes, pay them. Yes, obviously. I don't disagree at all. The other thing you want to do, though, is let them be creatively fulfilled. Don't take every decision away from them, right? Especially if you're a writer and you're not an artist, they probably have better ideas than you do about how to show things, right? So don't assume that you're right just because you have a vision. Let them be creatively fulfilled. It's an important part of any project, because even if you're paying them as much as you can, you're probably not paying them ridiculously large amounts, so they'll shut up and just do what you want.
No, but if you can, go for it.
Do that too.
Try that method. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, working with artists is, so, you know, there's the old stereotype about artists being temperamental, and it's true. But having been on the art side of things, it's more frustration than anything else in dealing with people, because a lot of people don't realize, like, art isn't just like, I'm going to make something pretty. It's like, I've dedicated time to figuring out, like, what is the best way for this to look, to convey your story, your message, the feeling, whatever it is that this should be. And then like having communication problems where people are like, oh, who cares about that? Do it this way. But that's just something I've noticed.
Creatively fulfilling for everyone involved is the only way to do a
Yes.
team creative project. That's my opinion. That is
Or
a
else
hill
you
I will die on personally. If you want to do a team project, and I know a thing or two about teams as we've talked about. If you want to do a team project, make sure everyone involved gets to be creatively fulfilled.
or else you might end up with giant robot problems.
Or else you might end up with giant robot problems, or no team at all, possibly.
That's very true. So you're you are very prolific when it comes to putting out the games. Like I swear, like every 6 weeks or so, you're sending me an email like, "Hey, I'm coming out with this new game." Um, how long does it usually take you for a comic? Like once a year or maybe two a year?
No, it's more like 4 or 5, maybe even 6 a year.
Really?
It's about the same rate as the games. Actually, it's not far different. Um, I I tend to get ahead, and then sort of go, okay, well, I'm going to run a Kickstarter now, and then while I'm running that Kickstarter, I get inspired and I'll write something else. I've literally in the last week written another comic. Totally different. This one, just totally different. It's more like art than a story, if that makes sense. It's more of an art kind of
Hmm.
comic. But I'm writing it with a new co-writer that I've not worked with before. But yeah, just in the last week, I've written an entire 22-page comic. While dealing with the Kickstarter and dealing with the Era of the Consortium stuff, getting Adapt ready to go on Kickstarter as well. I've got a card game coming very shortly, which, in fairness, I didn't design in the last week or two or anything. I designed it during COVID and it never got out the door. Yeah, it's about time it got up onto Kickstarter. So yeah, no, it's just
Nice.
busy. That's all. There's always once I get an idea in my head, I tend to just go, and it tends to come to life quite quickly.
Hmm. Do you like schedule it out like one comic, one game, or it's just like you could just do five comics in a row and put the games to the side, or like five games in a row and then, oh yeah, I should really do a comic. Like you need a
I
palate
I I
cleanse or
do just kind of go, oh well, I like this idea best. So if it in fact it's ended up being a lot of games in a row recently. You know, I did Shark Ninja, I did Kaiju, I did Balam, I did Consortium, I did a lot of games all in a row, and I spent a lot of time on games. And then, I thought, right, but Cascade, I want to get through that and to the end of that story because I think people are really going to enjoy this.
hmm. And sort of one last question.
Hmm.
With these comics, I mean, you've got a bunch sitting back there on your shelf.
Mm-hmm.
Um, are you ever planning to sort of like do um, like either an omnibus or like a large
I
collection
am
format?
actually.
Once you get enough.
Oh no, that's a great question. I am actually. I kind of imagined when I first started building up to Cascade, and what I modeled it on was, in fact, not dissimilar to the way the Marvel movies did it. So I wanted to have a comic for a character, and then maybe a second comic for that character, and so on. And then it would finally reach Cascade being the first confluence of those characters coming together. So I did Lacuna, I did Blue Shift, I did Violet, I did Blue Shift 2, Violet 2, Penumbra, and then Cascade. But I also found, well, that character in Penumbra was quite interesting. Vigilance. I want to do more with her, so I'll make her a comic. That character. There's someone outside of this. Excuse me. Sorry. There's someone outside of this who I want to write a comic about. I'm going to do Lobo or Fauna. And it allowed me to sort of build out the universe a bit. But basically, the first. Counting in my head. Hang on. You can see the gears turning. I know. Not exactly just the first, but the superhero comics. It would be 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 superhero comics that make up to and including Cascade. That I would then put together in a book, and I worked it out as looking not massively dissimilar to this when you get that far. So that's some chunky. So yes, my plan is to have a phase 1 book. Impala Comics phase 1 book that would include all of the comics to date once I get to Cascade number 3, and then onward. It's like a line. Right, you have a line drawn there. You're like, right, that's phase 1, coming on to phase 2 now. And phase 2 is different in its own ways. It's got its own flavor. Phase 1 is about not knowing what to do fundamentally. Phase 2 is going to be more about. I think it's going to be about manipulation for the most part. I think it's going to be about when the supervillains realize that head-on fights don't work. When the people realize that head-on fights don't work with a superhero. Violet's been arrested at least once. And she just broke the handcuffs and flew out of broke the roof of the car. It's like, yeah, okay. I mean, okay. So what do you do in that situation? And I think if there's a broad theme for phase 2, that's what it's going to be.
Interesting. Well, so for anyone who hasn't checked out the Kickstarter yet, in the description on YouTube, in the chat on YouTube, Rumble, and if you're watching this on X, go find those. I assume people watching on your channel will have a link on there as well.
And if you are watching on my channel, by the way, go check out Yang Yang Zhao's channel. It's definitely worth a look. You won't regret it.
At Yang Yang Zhao 4 here on both on YouTube and on X, and if you're on Rumble, it's just at Yang Yang Zhao. But yeah, everyone should go check this out. This looks it looks pretty interesting. I like the analogy of like having to get an office team work together because I can understand how they would not. That has been my large corporation working experience.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been so much fun to write Cascade 2 and Cascade 3 as we sort of explore how you defeat this enemy. Because they will win. I mean, spoilers, the superheroes are going to win at the end of the 3-issue arc. Sorry. I'm not going to say they all come out completely unscathed. Definitely not going to say that. But they will eventually win. But how? When they won't work together? That's the interesting question. To me, anyway. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, so everyone go check it out. And if you're still watching, stop by in about 2.5 hours. I will be on with Harmony Ginger, who is both victim of Corvette attacks and promoter of Braunstein tabletop role-playing games. That's 1 time for anyone who's interested. And we'll have a good old conversation about that and see if she's dating Elon Musk. And for anyone else who's interested, Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern, I will be on the T-shirted historians channel, presumably talking about tabletop role-playing games. I don't know what about, but something about them. So I'll see everyone later, and I'm
Thank you,
sure,
everyone.
Ed, we will see you before too long.
Oh, you won't be able to keep me away. I'm